WNST. Fast summer in a lot of ways. I don't know if it feels like a long time ago or a short time ago that I was lifting Lord Stanley's goblet above my head in Las Vegas. Made all those Canadians so angry we've now gone to war with them. They are no longer our friends and neighbors. Our president said so. Brad Gagnon is up in Toronto. He covers the National Football League for Bleacher Report. He also is a Bleeding Heart Blue Jay fan, but not a Maple Leaf fan, but still stands, as a guy that would like to see the Stanley Cup move north of the border for all of the Canadians up there. He's hanging out with Geddy Lee and covering the National Football League, and we welcome him back on. One thing for sure, man, you and I used to get together, even though you're a football guy, I'm a football guy. We've spent like the last 3-4 years talking about relevant baseball. Might be a little while before we do that again as the Blue Jays and Orioles get together, Brad.
Yeah, that operative word of relevant, right? I mean, we can talk baseball, but it ain't relevant right now. I mean, especially there. I feel for you guys. I mean, the quest to try to get to 40 wins when you're hitting September basically is not ideal. But you know what? It's going to hopefully these valleys result in peaks. But at this point, it's hard to be optimistic when we've gone through what we've gone through with the Red Sox and the Yankees in that division the last couple of decades.
Yeah, I mean, give me a little Blue Jay thing. I mean, the Orioles are playing them this week. Where is your hope at this point? And look, you're still a youngish guy. You lived through lots of bad baseball. I'm an old guy. I've lived through lots of bad baseball here. I remember, 1989 and Bob Malacky and Pete Harnish and the Nail and Dave Johnson. And I was there the night Carter hit the home run. That's now 25 years removed since Lenny Dykstra and Mitch Williams and all that nonsense up there. I don't know. With the Yankees and the Red Sox where they are now, it feels like it's a good thing we had a good time with the last couple of years with you with Joey Bats and Encarnacion and us down here with our little 5 minutes of fun, because it doesn't feel like there's going to be any fun in baseball in either one of these places. And I really feel that that's a tragedy for Toronto and for your country, where the turn-on of baseball the last couple of years in Canada was very real to me.
It was, and you know what? The one potential saving grace that, and I'm not familiar too much with obviously the Orioles farm system right now, but the saving grace that a lot of Blue Jays fans are taking some solace in is the presence of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the system. He's been raking in AAA. He was raking even more in AA. He is, I believe, the number one prospect in baseball by most measures, and certainly the number one on the Blue Jays, the best prospect they've had in maybe decades. And so having a player like that, even though there's still such an opportunity for so much to go wrong when you have a high-end prospect, having a guy like that and Bo Bichette, who's also a promising guy in the system for the Blue Jays, is really firing up a lot of the fans. It's funny, you got the wave that took place a couple years ago in Toronto regarding the Blue Jays, and that wave is sort of looking to cling to something still. The attendance hasn't dropped all the way back to where it was before. There's still folks that are looking for a reason to cheer on the Blue Jays.
It's actually worse here. And the Yankees were in on Sunday night, and it's worse than anything from the Perlazo, Tremblay era, and they let kids in free here, and people still don't come. So that really is the tragedy. We play Kansas City this weekend. They won. They are at least selling tickets and selling hope and selling young players and whatever the next level is. We're waiting on the draft next year so we can draft Bobby Witt Jr., who's 17. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel close.
And that's understandably. In 2018, with so many options for your entertainment dollars to go toward, online or otherwise, whether it's just sitting home and watching Netflix rather than turning on an Orioles game, you can't ask your fan base to wait anymore. Otherwise, you do risk having that situation. And there's a lot of folks in the Jays organization that are hoping, gosh, whether or not they bring up Guerrero down the stretch, which they won't likely do, they're saying he better be Rookie of the Year caliber next season at the age of 20. Otherwise, these fans might not wait. And that's, as you say, something that they're witnessing in Baltimore, that the attendance has dropped off to the Jays being in the middle of the pack this year versus number one in the American League last year. The transition happens quick. And I do think that, Toronto was, the Jays' attendance was better than Baltimore's when they both were good as well. So they're relative, right? Baltimore's has fallen off, so is Toronto's, and you notice it more when you already aren't quite there in terms of your attendance and your fan base. But Yeah, it hurts right now, and I've been there where the Blue Jays have had nothing even in the system to get excited about, and clearly we're not going to be competing with the Yankees and Red Sox for many years to come. The latter remains true with the Blue Jays. The former, fortunately for a lot of Jays fans, not necessarily true with their system, and that's really what again is kind of keeping folks moving. But when you're well below 500 and you're out of contention in August. It's pretty depressing no matter, what's in store for the future season.
Well, we won't be watching the games this week, but this is great because we're saving it all up for the NFL, which is what Brad Gagnon covers. You can follow him out on Twitter at Brad.
Right.
We do that at Bleacher Report. He is their national football writer out of the fighting city of Toronto, north of the border. You can follow him out on Twitter at Brad_Gagnon. That's Gagnon. Also out on our Facebook Live where he's my Facebook pal. All right, so, you're a long way away, and all the national writers were piling on this narrative of Lamar Jackson's going to steal Joe Flacco's job. Dude, I've been watching football a long time. I'm not sure that Lamar Jackson's ever going to win 10 games as a starting quarterback in this league based on what I've seen in the early going. I'm not down on the kid. He's a nice kid. I love the way he runs around. I wouldn't want to tackle him, but I don't know that a running quarterback and this league and the way quarterbacks get hit, that I'm ever going to bet on that. I'm not. And I'm not going to bet against Joe Flacco right now. This has been a fascinating 5-month period of time for the Ravens where it goes from the outhouse to people now with Buffalo coming down here next week believing that this team's going to win 10 or 11 games. Most people in Baltimore are pretty bullish on this team. They've looked really good this summer.
Yeah, it's been a promising offseason. And Lamar Jackson putting together a good preseason where he has progressively gotten better on paper and really in terms of the eyeball test is encouraging, but not something we should walk away and say, oh, well, he should all of a sudden be the starter. I think it just should be a nice bonus, right? That a guy who potentially could be the successor to Joe Flacco or might not be, has looked better than many people expected. And that's really all you need to say, right? It's progress. And, him having a fantastic performance in the fourth preseason game is just something that you should smile at and say, whether the kid turns into something or not, at least he's not stinking it up right now. And that's what a lot of folks figured would happen with him in the early going in his career, and it hasn't transpired that way. So, I don't know. I wrote a piece in light of that big preseason game in the past, last weekend, which kind of said, at what point or how long should the leash be on Joe Flacco? The implication there not being that Lamar Jackson necessarily would earn a chance to, or is better suited to take this team into the playoffs or something this season, but more so if the Ravens struggle, if they get off to a slow start, if they're buried in that division in October and November, do you go the Eli Manning, Davis Webb route from last year where that became a huge controversy and give the guy a chance, or even give Robert Griffin III a chance to make some starts? So that would be worth the debate for me at some point this season. That is a debate that I'm sure most Ravens fans, if not all, I guess Ravens fans, hope they don't have to make, because if this team is in contention in any shape or form, Joe Flacco is the guy. You're right. He's had, again, I'm an outsider, but from what I can tell, a fantastic off season. The team in general has had a very promising off season, and it looks like they have some of the main pieces in place. Finally, there's some receivers there that they brought in, and veteran targets that look as though they're going to improve that receiving core for him. They obviously have a running back who they feel pretty darn good about all of a sudden. That hasn't been the case in several years. The line is building itself up, and so you look at all that, you consider they already had a great defense, and you certainly think that they can be in contention to challenge Pittsburgh and at the very least be a wild card contender for much of this season if things all go to plan. And if they don't, well, you've got a chance to at least get a look at a guy like Lamar Jackson who could be a star in this league one day.
Well, if we're going to study this from the bottom up, I guess we got to start in Cleveland. I have been a pretty prime Hard Knocks watcher here this August. Maybe it speaks something about the lack of good touring bands in August here this year, or me moving around. But I've watched 3 hours of the Cleveland Browns and Hard Knocks. I'm not convinced they're any better, any worse. I'm certainly not convinced that Baker Mayfield is any any closer to winning 12 games in this league than Lamar Jackson is either, and I certainly would not have taken him with the first overall pick. But he does have a sense of humor. He makes me laugh a little bit, and it was nice when he had Brad Paisley on the bus. But you're wondering, is Cleveland going to be any better? Is Cincinnati, have they really solved this offensive line? And now we hear about Cordy Glenn, and I'm not ready to ever kick dirt on the coffin of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just been at this too long. I know better than to think that, well, this is going to be the year they win 7 or 8 games. I'm never ready to bet on that. But I do think the Ravens have stepped up. I'm interested in the Bengals and Browns as to what they are. I'll give the Steelers just a nod that they're going to be good for 9, 10, 11 wins and a pain in the ass and healthy and nasty and good and, over 500 most of the year. Boy, the Bengals and Browns are a box of chocolates to me on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I'm a lot more intrigued. And maybe it's the Hard Knocks effect and the Moneyball effect and the 15 first-round picks in 5 years. But there's something about this team, this Browns team, that is a lot more intriguing to me than a Bengals team that is bringing back the same head coach who has failed to win a playoff game for a decade and a half now. And it does feel as though that Bengals franchise has hit a wall under Marvin Lewis, has hit a wall under Andy Dalton, hit a wall relying on A.J. Green to be their only offensive weapon. Whether or not that changes this year, with some, John Ross type, John Ross and some other potential contributors to that offense remains to be seen. And I just don't know if they're going to have enough in them. I think that they're sort of trending downward. They refuse to participate in free agency on a year-by-year basis. The lines become terrible as a result of that. I just don't see it with the Bengals anymore. And so, I think that they've hit a wall and, if anything, are headed downhill, whereas the Browns are clearly ascending. And that's because you literally can't you can't descend when you're at a 0-win season. But, I mean, yeah, you got Baker Mayfield, you got Tyrod Taylor, who took the Bills to the playoffs last year, or at least was part of that equation. You've got Myles Garrett in what should be a big second year. He looks healthy. He wasn't healthy last year, still managed to have a strong rookie season. And then you've just got so many options all over the place, whether they be free agents who came in like Jarvis Landry or Kevin Zeitler or several different defensive backs that they brought in, or whether they be the rooks or the young guys, the David Njokus that we're not even thinking about, Jabril Peppers, because they're being overshadowed by the other first-round picks like Baker Mayfield and Myles Garrett. And so they're deep, and they've got a lot of talent. And it's a weird thing to say about a team that won 0 games in 2017 and 1 in 2016, but it is absolutely true with the Browns, and they could absolutely go from 0 to, a semi-competitive season. Again, don't think they're winning 12, just as you said. But
well, I'm not going to sleep on it. We play them in week 5. I mean, we have all 3 of our road games in the division the first 5 weeks. I mean, we play in Cincinnati week 2, and then weeks 4 and 5. I mean, we're going to go see this Browns team at a kind of a dangerous point in the season for me. I mean, Jimmy Smith's going to be coming back. We're just going to be leaving Pittsburgh. I'm assuming they'll be 3-1 or 2-2. I would hope they're not going to be 1-3 at that point. I'm hoping for 3-1, quite frankly, at that point. But I see the Browns as dangerous. I'm not going to be the guy doing the annual urination upon them and saying they're another 2-14. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, we might all be, regretting this right now, right? I mean, it's absolutely possible that they will go 2-14. I mean, last year I remember not this optimistic, but I was optimistic about the Browns last year. I thought, you got Myles Garrett on board, and again, they've sort of gone through the money ball. I'm saying a lot of the same things I'm saying now.
Don't admit that, dude. Don't admit that. I'll exploit that. That's a weakness, Brad.
I know. But, I was saying it because it was true. It just hadn't developed yet. It wasn't complete yet. And now you sort of get this vision of the Browns and the last 4 or 5 years and this rebuild, and you can see that it's kind of the circle's sort of been completed. And whether or not it works or not, again, they're substantially more talented than they were a year ago. And you do get a feel as though, okay, we were phoning it in for a few years. We practically admitted we were phoning it in for a few years. Last year wasn't about being competitive. It was about taking one more step with these young guys and potentially getting that quarterback in the following draft. They didn't really, again, participate in free agency to much of an extent, despite having so much money to spend. It was all part of the process. And then this year, they said, we're paying up for Jarvis Landry, and we're bringing in several veteran defensive backs to spruce up the roster. And, all of a sudden, You've got some veterans too, which is required of any team. You can't just build from the draft only. And so you get the feeling that they've sort of completed this experimental rebuild. And now they're ready to actually, reveal themselves to the football world, and we'll see how it looks. But yeah, it's a different feel from last year, but it's easily, because there's so much up in the air, a potential situation where we could be saying, oh, how did we fall for that one?
Brad Gagnon covers all things NFL for Bleacher Report up in Toronto. You can follow his journey at @Brad_Gagnon. That's Gagnon. And outside of our own division and where we're going to be, I'm trying to get focused on all the rest of this and the good teams from last year, the Rams and the Eagles, and sort of the coming on teams, the Jaguars and the Titans over on our side. We've seen the Colts already this year, and wondering where they're going to be with Reich and with Luck getting on the field. Everybody is optimistic. I mean, you just made a case for the Cleveland Browns, Brad. I mean, if you can make a case for them, I mean, the 49ers are going to be good this year. It's an open season, and I think that's the beauty of the NFL. I mean, even if you think the Patriots are still the best team, they've had a lot of palace intrigue as well this offseason. There's something to talk about in 32 cities around this league.
Yeah, it is a particularly intriguing year in terms of the parity with this league. That cliche, I've used it with you, I'm sure. There's 32 teams in the league, and there's fewer than 32 franchise caliber quarterbacks. And I think that's the key, is that number or that ratio has come closer to 32 for 32 in recent years in terms of whether a team has a franchise quarterback, you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, the New England Patriots, or you feel like you've got him in the stable, you have the Cleveland Browns, Buffalo Bills, Arizona Cardinals. And so there aren't many, you're talking about trade targets for Teddy Bridgewater as the backup with the Jets. Many other years in the past, someone would have already made a massive offer for him and said, he's our new guy, we're going to start him this year. There's no job opening. And that's because, guys have been healthy too. That's nice. But aside from maybe a chance to start in one of the 3 Florida cities, if the Bucs want to give up on Jameis Winston, the Dolphins give up on Ryan Tannehill, or the Jaguars realize that they need something more than Blake Bortles, I can't find a team in the league that would be interested in Teddy Bridgewater as a starter right now, which really is a testament to the wave of good young quarterbacks that have come into the league in recent years, as well as the unwillingness to retire or, decline in some of the great ones who are still kicking butt into their mid to late 30s or even early 40s in Tom Brady's case. And so that, I think, is really the key to that, is that everyone feels they're competitive because everyone feels they have a quarterback. And if you have a quarterback, you can be competitive. And so that's, I think, a big aspect of that in terms of there's really no team right now that you look at and say, they just got no chance this year. And maybe that's the Jets and the Bills and the Dolphins to an extent, especially if New York and Buffalo ride with rookie quarterbacks in Sam Darnold and Josh Allen early on. But the Bills made the playoffs last year, and so they can't necessarily feel like they're down and out either. I mean, it's hard to find a team that you can't get optimistic about right now, which is incredibly rare, even for a league where everybody seems to have a shot on practically an annual basis.
Well, what stock are you buying? I was out in Vegas very, very briefly about a week and a half ago, coming back from Yellowstone Park. I made a little connection and spent the night. Nice. And I could have gotten the Ravens at 40-1. I would bet on the Ravens to make the playoffs, whatever that number is, and it's probably not much, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is. I would probably not even that, probably 5-2 or whatever to make the playoffs. But I think they're going to be a playoff team. I'm not going to go so far as to say what or who is going to be in Atlanta, but I wouldn't bet against the Ravens. But I'm asking you, who's going to be in Atlanta? Give me a little sort of outsider perspective on it. Give me a team we're not counting on to be good this year.
You know what? I do like the Tennessee Titans made the playoffs and won a playoff game last year, but no one's talking about them, right? I mean, it's all about Houston coming back in that division. It's all about the Colts with Andrew Luck. It's about Jacksonville being a Super Bowl contender after coming close in the AFC Championship game last year. I really like Tennessee a lot. I like that what they've done with the running game. We know the line is strong. I like Marcus Mariota in his 4th season. They've built up their defense. I think Adoree Jackson's going to have a great season as a cornerback as well as a special teamer. So Tennessee really stands out as a sleeper team in my book when I look at potential teams that are creeping up. And the other is a team that, when I jump to the NFC, that has sort of been victimized by the fact that everybody is fired up about everyone else in their division, or at least two particular teams in the division, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. And that everyone's talking San Francisco. You alluded to the 49ers as a potential playoff team this year. Jimmy Garoppolo, you win 5 straight at the end of last season. You built yourself up pretty nicely in your rebuild. You look like you have a great coach in Kyle Shanahan, a good GM in John Lynch. So good things going on there. Great things going on with the Rams, who spent big bucks in the offseason to build onto a team that was very, very powerful on offense last season, has a very good defense as well. Everyone's talking Rams and 49ers and sort of forgetting that even though they were gutted in the offseason and they've been declining the last couple of years and the Legion of Boom isn't the same anymore, if it even exists at all, Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson, and he should have Doug Baldwin back, and the line is a little bit better than it was, and Chris Carson and the rest of that running game looks incredibly rejuvenated. And so, yeah, I wouldn't count out Pete Carroll. I wouldn't count out Russell Wilson and that Seahawks team as a team that's getting really no attention right now and could creep up and do some pretty good things this season.
Yeah, my team might stink, might be the Arizona Cardinals. I usually try to do this the other way around, Brad. I'm like, well, okay, give me the Bills, the Jets, and the Dolphins, that trifecta. I think they're all going to stink. Who else is going to stink? I don't know that the Browns are going to stink, but, the Cardinals are probably going to stink, right?
Yeah. I think, there's always the chance that either Sam Bradford does what he did in week 1 last year, where he looked like a Pro Bowler, and actually stays healthy, and this is the year for him. There's equally as good a chance that Josh Rosen, who is, I think, the most polished of all the quarterbacks in this draft class, gets an opportunity and comes through and has a very strong season as well. There's a chance both those things happen, or at least one of those two things happens. There's a good chance that David Johnson is an all-pro running back, as he was 2 years ago, and of course he wasn't available to that team last year. But yeah, they've been trying to fight off the R word, right? I mean, they've tried to say, we're not going to rebuild, essentially by bringing in Bradford and by continuing to sort of try to stay competitive in that division. But it just doesn't add up. I mean, eventually Father Time is going to get the best of Larry Fitzgerald, and I think that probably happens fairly soon. And they do have just too many questions at the quarterback position. There's nobody besides Fitzgerald in the receiving game. I don't know if they can necessarily trust Johnson this season coming off a lost campaign. And the defense just isn't what it used to be. I mean, it's Patrick Peterson and then just a bunch of nothing. I mean, they missed Calais Campbell. They missed the linebackers they've let go in back-to-back off seasons. They obviously don't have the Honey Badger anymore back there. I mean, it's just not the same D as it was before.
And they're going to miss the head coach,
Seattle,
too.
But,
the head coach, they're going to miss him, too.
Good point. I mean, that's another thing we're all overlooking. They got a rookie head coach in there now, and so, it's been a bit of a tumultuous off season. They saw their GM, deal with a suspension as a result of a drunk driving charge, and so it just doesn't add up. It feels like it's going to be one of those down years. You're moving on from your longtime quarterback. Kudos for that. A bit of a weird move to bring in a bridge like Bridgewater, but it feels like it's going to be kind of a recovery year for the Cardinals, and then it's going to be about regrouping and probably installing Josh Rosen as your full-time starter next offseason, and especially in that division where it's going to be tough to keep up with those three.
Always good to visit with you. We'll do some baseball, some hockey, and some football further down the road. We'll try not to beat the Blue Jays up too much around here at Camden Yards. We'll send in the AA pitching instead of the AAA pitching this week for you, okay?
Honestly, I think either team would be fine with losing 2 out of 3. I don't know. It's at this point in time, who knows what the Blue Jays even want out of that series too. So, but we'd appreciate any help.
As long as the Orioles don't go beating the Royals this weekend and taking themselves out of the Bobby Witt Jr. sweepstakes, I'm good with that. Brad, take care of yourself, man. Appreciate the time as always. And if you see Geddy Lee, tell him I still love him, okay?
Always do, man. Thank you.
You got it. There he is, Brad Gagnon, north of the border up in Toronto at Bleacher Report. You can follow him out on Twitter at Brad_Gagnon. That's Gagnon. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. You can listen to what you want, when you want, where you want, how you want. No static at all. It's just like Steely Dan, who's going to be playing the Model Lyric on October 11th to kick off my 50th birthday week. I'm very excited about that. Kind of broke my heart to hear Brad talking all that good stuff about the Tennessee Titans. I hope the Ravens don't lose on my 50th birthday in Nashville on October 14th. They better not do that. I'll have to go to the Jack Daniels distillery and drink my sorrows away. But I'm expecting a good year, and they're expecting a great year down at the Model Lyric. Model-Lyric.com. Kansas is playing in November, right around Thanksgiving as well. We had David Ragsdale, the violinist from Kansas, on the program. You can find that out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault as well. John Cusack coming to the Model Lyric as well. Learn more, Model-Lyric.com. We'll tell you more about that.